Well, I hope you're not eating right now. Actually, you know what? Go ahead and eat. Just maybe not meat. And definitely not goat. Because tonight's stories come straight from the people who spend their lives working the land, feeding their animals, and trusting that when morning comes, everything will still be where they left it. It won't always be. Tonight I've got stories from farmers and ranchers across the U.S. and Latin America who say they came face to face with something that should not exist. We're talking drained livestock, glowing red eyes in the dark, and a creature that does not care how big your dog is or how loud your gun is. These are Chupacabra encounters, allegedly true and reported by the people who lived them. If you've got a scary story of your own, send it to me. And do me a favor, leave this episode a follow and a review on Spotify. It means a lot. Now then, let's get into it. The thing behind the barn. I want to start by saying I am not the type of person who believes in monsters. I have a biology degree. I spent years working in wildlife conservation before my husband and I bought our small farm in southern New Mexico in 2016. I believe in science and evidence. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that what I'm about to describe is not something I arrived at easily. It took me a long time to even be willing to say the word out loud. We raise alpacas, about 20 of them on 20 acres outside of Deming. We also have 2 livestock guardian dogs, both Great Pyrenees, named Biscuit and Clementine. These dogs are not small and they are not timid. Their entire job is to protect the herd from predators, and they are very good at it. In 4 years, we had never lost a single alpaca to anything. Then came the fall of 2019. It started with the dogs. One morning in October, I noticed that both Biscuit and Clementine were refusing to go past the north side of our barn. Not couldn't, refused. They would walk with me up to a certain point, maybe 20 feet from the barn's north wall, and then they would stop and sit down and whine. I checked the area thoroughly. No snake, no dead animal, no strange scent I could detect. Nothing to explain their behavior. This went on for about 4 days. I figured something had died near the barn foundation and they could smell it. I checked under the barn, walked the perimeter, found nothing. On the 5th night, I woke up at around 1 a.m. to the dogs barking. Not their normal alert bark. This was different, lower, more frantic. And then it stopped very suddenly. That sudden silence was what got me out of bed. I went to the window and looked toward the barn. I could see the yard light we have mounted on the barn's south side. The north side was dark. I grabbed my flashlight and my husband's spotlight and went out. Both dogs were at the barn's south wall, not barking, not growling, just sitting there pressed against the wall, ears flat, shaking. I had never seen either of them behave like that. Clementine had actually urinated on herself. I swept the spotlight around the yard. Nothing. I walked the fence line. Nothing. I went around to the north side of the barn. There were 3 alpacas dead on the ground. They were arranged almost in a line, which made no sense. Animals don't fall in a line. They were on their sides, eyes open, and the ground around them was dry. No blood, no signs of injury that I could see at first. I knelt down and found the puncture marks, 2 wounds each on the neck, clean and deep. No tearing, no bruising around the wounds. like something had simply inserted two very precise points into their necks and taken everything inside. I called the state veterinary diagnostic lab. A vet came out 2 days later and examined the carcasses. The official report listed cause of death as undetermined. She noted the wounds and the lack of hemorrhaging and told me she had seen reports of similar deaths in the region over the past few years. When I asked her what she thought caused it, she was quiet for a moment and then said, "I honestly don't know." About a week after that, I was locking up the alpaca pen just after dark. I had the spotlight with me and I was making a final pass around the barn. When I came around to the north side, the spotlight caught something. It was crouched at the base of the barn wall, right where the alpacas had died, low to the ground, maybe 3 feet in that position. It was hairless, gray-skinned, with a long spine and a ridge of something along its back. Spines or quills, I couldn't tell. It had a long snout, and I could see its eyes reflect the light. They were red, a deep, flat red with no shine to them. It looked at me. I want to tell you I did something practical and scientific in that moment. I didn't. I screamed, dropped the spotlight, and ran back inside. My husband went out with his rifle and found nothing, just the spotlight on the ground and the usual prints in the dirt that we still could not identify. We sold 12 alpacas that winter and reduced our operations significantly. We added security cameras to the property. The cameras have picked up movement along the north fence line on 4 separate occasions since then. In each clip, you can see something moving at the edge of the frame. It's small and fast, and the resolution isn't good enough to make out detail. I have watched those clips dozens of times, and still don't have an explanation that satisfies me. Every night, it got closer. From Ridgeline Ranch, Rory. I want to be clear about something. This didn't happen once. It happened every night for 3 weeks, and every single night it came a little bit closer to the house. I have a small cattle operation in the Ozark foothills of northwest Arkansas. 12 head of cattle, some chickens, and until the fall of 2015, 2 dogs, a blue heeler named Ace and a mixed breed named Lou. My farmhouse sits on a low ridge with the barn about 60 yards downhill to the east and a cedar thicket another 40 yards beyond the barn. It started with sounds coming from that cedar thicket around midnight, a high-pitched, wavering call. Not a coyote. I have heard coyotes my entire life, and this was not that. It was steadier, more sustained, and it had a quality to it that I can only describe as wet, like the sound was coming through something liquid. It rose and fell in a slow pattern that almost sounded intentional, like something practicing a call that it heard but didn't fully understand. First night, it stayed in the thicket. The cattle shifted around in the pen, nothing dramatic. I listened from the porch for a while, couldn't see anything, went to bed. Second night, same sound, closer. Not in the thicket anymore, it was near the barn. Third night, I saw the eyes on the barn roof, 2 low red points of light right at the peak of the barn's roofline, looking down toward the cattle pen. I watched them for about 10 minutes from the porch. They didn't move. Then the sound started again from up there on the roof, that same wavering, wet call, and every cow in the pen turned to face the barn and went completely still. Fourth night, same eyes on the roof, same call, but Ace started losing his mind. Not barking, screaming. There is a specific sound a dog makes when it is past the point of barking, when it has crossed into pure panic, and Ace was making that sound. Lou had gone under the porch and would not come out. I went inside and got my rifle. By the time I came back out, the eyes were gone. I lost my first chicken on the 5th night. Found it in the morning, 2 puncture marks, no blood. You know the rest of that part of the story. But here is what was different about my situation. The creature wasn't just taking animals and leaving. It was establishing a routine. Every single night it would appear on the barn roof, at the barn door, along the fence line of the cattle pen, and each night it was slightly closer to the house than it had been the night before. I started tracking it. I made a rough map marking where I saw the eyes each night. The progression was slow but completely consistent. 40 yards from the house, 35, 30, 28. It was not random. It was moving toward me. On the 14th night, I found it at the base of the steps to my porch. I had fallen asleep in the chair by the front window, which I had started doing instead of going to bed, and something woke me around 3 in the morning. Not a sound, just that particular feeling of being watched that goes straight to the base of your skull. I looked at the window. Then I looked lower. Through the porch railing slats at the bottom of the steps, there were 2 red eyes looking up at me through the glass. It was on all 4s, low to the ground, that spine ridge raised, head tilted at an angle that looked almost curious, like a dog that has heard an interesting sound. It held the position for what felt like a very long time while I sat frozen in the chair. Neither of us moved. Then it made the wet call once, closer than I had ever heard it, and the windows vibrated slightly in their frames. Then it turned and walked back toward the barn, not quickly, slowly and deliberately, the way you walk when you want someone to watch you leave. I called my neighbor the next morning, a man I'll call Dale, who has farmed the ridge adjacent to mine for 30 years. I told him what had been happening. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "It was figuring out where you sleep." I asked him what he meant. He said when his father was young, there were stories in the county about something that would approach a farmhouse the same way I was describing. Slow progression, every night closer. And the ones who stayed put, who didn't leave, who thought they could wait it out. Well, he didn't finish the sentence. He just told me not to sleep near the windows anymore. I stayed with Dale for 2 weeks after that. When I came back, I found 3 dead chickens and 1 dead cat I didn't even know I had. The nightly appearances stopped, but I sleep in the back bedroom now, away from the windows. I moved the bed myself the day I came home. I will never move it back. The night Rufus didn't come back. From Ironwood Farm, Irene. I need to start by saying this is not an easy story for me to tell. My daughter found this podcast and she asked me to tell it because she thinks people should know. I'm 61 years old and I have farmed in the Verde Valley area of Arizona for most of my adult life. I am not a person who exaggerates. I am not a person who dramatizes. I am going to tell you exactly what happened in November of 2021, and I am going to tell you about Rufus, and I am going to need you to take me seriously. Rufus was a 7-year-old Anatolian shepherd, 130 pounds. If you don't know the breed, Anatolian shepherds are working livestock guardian dogs, not pets, not companions, not animals that scare easily. They are bred to confront predators. Rufus had driven off coyotes in 2 separate bobcats without my involvement. He was calm, dominant, and fearless in the way that only working dogs who have done real work can be. Whatever we encountered that night, Rufus was afraid of it long before I was. It started 3 days before the main incident. Rufus began refusing to patrol the back perimeter of the property at night. He would do his rounds up to the midpoint of the east pasture and then stop, plant his feet, hackles up, head low, that low, sustained growl that I had only heard from him twice before, once at the bobcat, once at a rattlesnake den in the irrigation ditch. A warning growl. Something is here growl. I walked the back pasture every day for 3 days, found nothing. The goats were fine, the chickens were fine. On the night of November 8th, a Monday, I was woken at around 2 in the morning by Rufus barking. He rarely barked. Growling was his standard register. Barking meant something had crossed a line. I got up, got dressed, got my .357 revolver and my flashlight. I had a spotlight I could mount to the flashlight, but in my hurry I left it on the table. That was a mistake. I stepped off the porch, and Rufus was at the edge of the yard, at the border where the grass ends and the bare dirt of the east pasture begins. He was not moving forward. He was barking at the dark at the back of the pasture, and every few seconds he would cut the bark short and listen, then start again. I walked up to him and stood beside him and pointed the flashlight toward the back of the pasture. The beam only reaches so far. At the edge of the light, I could see the fence line, the cedar posts, the wire. Beyond the fence, the scrub slope leading up to the canyon wall. And something was on top of the fence. Not sitting on it, crouched on it, balanced on the top wire with all 4 limbs, the spine ridge fully raised, the head tilted to the right. It was directly at the edge of my flashlight's reach, maybe 80 yards out, and even at that distance the proportions were clearly wrong. Too long. The limbs gripped the top wire with what looked like individual fingers. I raised the revolver. I was not going to fire at 80 yards with a handgun in the dark. That is not responsible shooting, and I know it. But the motion of raising it seemed to register with the creature. It dropped off the fence into the scrub. Gone. Rufus stopped barking. He stood rigid for another minute. Then he moved forward, slowly, toward the fence line. I followed him. We were about 20 yards from the fence when it came back over. It came over fast and low, hit the ground on our side of the fence, and charged. I'm going to slow this down because it happened in approximately 4 seconds, and I need you to understand what 4 seconds is when something is running at you. First second. It cleared the fence, and I saw it full body in my flashlight for the first time. Hairless, gray-skinned, larger than I had thought from a distance, maybe the size of a large German shepherd, but longer, wrong-jointed. That ridge fully raised and the mouth open, showing teeth that were small and numerous, and the same gray as the skin. Second. Rufus went at it. He hit it in the chest before it reached me. 130 pounds of Anatolian shepherd at a full run. The impact was loud. They went down together in the dirt. Third second. I raised the revolver and pulled the trigger. Nothing. I pulled it again. Nothing. A .357 revolver does not jam. That is the reason people carry revolvers instead of semi-automatics in rough country. Revolvers do not jam. This one did not fire. Fourth second. Rufus screamed. An animal sound, high and awful, that I had never heard from him before and that I will hear for the rest of my life. And then the thing was gone, back over the fence, fast as it had come, and Rufus was on the ground. He was alive. He was on his side, breathing hard, a long, deep gash from his shoulder to his ribs. I got him into the truck and drove to the emergency vet in Cottonwood, 45 minutes away, Rufus lying across my lap, bleeding through the towels I had pressed against the wound. He survived the injury. He spent 11 days at the veterinary clinic. The revolver, when the vet staff looked at it later while I was waiting, it functioned perfectly. Every cylinder fired on the first pull. I went back out the following morning with my neighbor and her rifle, and we checked the fence line. There was blood on the wire where it had come back over. Not much, but some. Dark and thick. We found Rufus's tracks in the dirt, and the creature's tracks, and the disturbed ground where they had gone down together. And then, about 30 feet from that spot, the creature's tracks simply stopped. Clean. No drag marks, no trail leading away. Just tracks that ended in the middle of bare dirt, like something had stepped out of the world. I brought Rufus home after 11 days. He is healed physically, but he will not go past the midpoint of the east pasture. Just like before it happened, he stops at the same spot, plants his feet, hackles up. Whatever is on the other side of that fence, he can still smell it. I believe him. I have started sleeping with the revolver on the nightstand. I pull the trigger once every morning when I wake up, just to confirm it works. So far, it always does. So far. It learned my voice. I run a small sheep operation in the high desert outside of Marfa, Texas. About 80 acres, 40 sheep, 2 border collies named Kit and Drum. I have lived on that land for 11 years. I know every sound it makes at every hour of every season. The way the wind moves through the scrub in October is different from the way it moves in March. I know the coyotes by their call patterns. I know when something is wrong before I can explain why I know. The summer of 2017 is when it started. First sign was the sheep. Not dead, just wrong. 3 mornings in a row I came out and the entire flock was standing in a tight cluster in the southeast corner of the pasture, facing the same direction. Not grazing, not moving, just standing there staring at the far fence line. Kit and Drum were with them, pressed against the flock's legs, which they never do during the day. Kit was shaking. I walked the fence line. Nothing disturbed, no tracks I could identify, no gaps. I put it down to a coyote passing through at night and went about my work. 4th morning, same thing. Flock in the corner, dogs shaking. I walked the fence again, and this time I found something. Along the north fence, in a stretch of soft caliche, there were marks in the ground. They were not consistent enough to be called footprints exactly, but they showed a clear path. Something had paced back and forth along the outside of that fence for a long stretch. Whatever it was, it had walked the fence slowly, not charging, not circling, pacing, like it was looking for something specific. On the 6th night, I decided to stay up and watch from the porch. I had a spotlight and my rifle and a thermos of coffee. Midnight came and went. Nothing. 1 in the morning. Nothing. Just the usual desert sounds, the wind, a barn owl working the far edge of the property, the occasional shifting of the sheep in the pen. Then the dogs started growling, low and continuous, both of them facing a north fence from the porch steps. And then I heard my own voice. From somewhere outside the north fence, in the dark, something said, "Kit, hey Kit, come here." It was my voice. Not similar to my voice, not a rough imitation. It was my voice, the way a recording of you sounds when you play it back, slightly wrong in a way you can't fully place, but undeniably yours. The cadence, the pitch, the way I shortened the vowel in Kit's name, all of it. Kit took one step off the porch toward the fence before I grabbed her collar. I stood there with my hand around her collar, spotlight aimed at the north fence, and I couldn't see a thing, just the fence and the dark scrub beyond it. But the voice had stopped as soon as I grabbed Kit, like it knew I had caught it. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. On the 8th night, I finally saw it. I had moved my watch to the truck, parked on the north side of the property with the engine off and the windows down. Better angle, better cover. Around 2 a.m, something came out of the scrub line and stopped at the fence. Small, low to the ground at first, crouched, hairless, gray-skinned even in the dark. It had a long neck that had stretched upward as it approached the wire, and I could see the silhouette of something along its back, raised and irregular. It moved on all fours, but the front limbs were longer than the back ones, giving it a strange rolling gait, like a hyena, but slower, more deliberate. It stopped at the fence, and it lifted its head, and it said my name. Samuel. My voice, full and clear in the dark desert, 2 a.m, nothing around for miles. It said my name in my voice. I raised the rifle. My hands were not steady, I'll admit that. I put the crosshairs on it, and it turned its head toward the truck. It couldn't have seen me in the dark from that distance, but it turned toward me anyway. Then it made a different sound. Not my voice anymore. Something lower, something wet and resonant that I felt in my back teeth more than heard with my ears. I fired. I don't know if I hit it. Something hit the fence post. I saw the wire jump. The thing dropped low and was gone into the scrub before I could chamber another round. When I checked the fence in the morning, there was dark fluid on the lowest wire strand. Not enough to tell much. I took a photo of it. The photo is still on my phone. I didn't hear it again after that. Not the pacing, not the voice, not my name in the dark. But the sheep still won't graze the north end of the pasture. 2 years later, they still won't go near that fence line. Animals don't forget whatever frightened them that badly. And honestly, neither do I.